Hi, my name's Amy Sobel, and this is my Costa Rica experience presentation for the Maymester 2013 through the University of Colorado, Denver. So let's get started. A little bit about myself. I am a graduate student with the Department of Environmental Sciences at UCD. I will be graduating in December of this year, hopefully, fingers crossed. The reason I chose to be a part of this trip, or applied to be part of this trip, I guess I should say, I love to travel, I love the environment, and I thought what better way to do it than to go and visit Costa Rica for the first time. I knew it was one of the predecessors for the environmental movement, or I guess sustainable development movement and ecotourism, or that's what we hear here in the States. So I wanted to experience it for myself and see what all the hype was about. So let's get started. Some of my first impressions after a very long flight and delay and overnight in San Jose with about 2 hours of sleep. Thank God it was as beautiful as I thought it was going to be. Although it was greener and more lush than I ever could have imagined. Just walking around and seeing the countryside throughout the whole trip, but it especially struck me in the beginning. You couldn't tell, as far as vegetated cover goes, you couldn't tell where one thing begins and one thing ends. Everything grows on everything else, and it was just the most lush environment I'd ever been in. It was almost like I had to keep pinching myself because it was all the things I usually see on TV right before your eyes. One of our first stops was at La Paz. It was a sort of zoo, I guess you could call it, although not like any zoo I'd ever been to before. There were jaguars, toucans, snakes, birds, hummingbirds, butterflies, everything you could imagine, poisonous dart frogs that we could get right up next to, but thankfully are not poisonous without the ants that they usually eat. There were parrots that spoke English and Spanish to us, which I definitely got a kick out of. Figured out that I am scared of hummingbirds and butterflies for the first time. There were so many of them, and they have quite the irregular flight pattern and kept flying at our heads. So I don't think I'll ever see those two species the same again, but all the same, it was a lot of fun. One of the highlights of the trip that started in the very beginning were our bus rides. Our mode of transportation was our nifty little tour bus with our amazing driver, Nan. It was definitely one of the best parts of the trip. It was by far, I think, the only way one should experience the country, other than, I don't know, maybe biking it or walking it. But in a realistic time frame, it was amazing. We got a real feel for the country, the countryside, the people, the architecture. I felt like we got more of a hands-on experience. As you can see, it was a bit treacherous at times. We went over many a shoddy-looking bridge on a big bus. We saw larger buses do it, though, so that definitely helped to calm some of our fears. There were quite a lot of numerous winding roads, as you can imagine, and crazy drivers, but Hernan kept us safe and sound. He was amazing, so humble and kind and patient. One of the first of many Costa Ricans who we got to meet over the trip who shared the same sentiments. Part of those bus rides were regular stops along the way. We had dozens of talks in the best classrooms I've ever learned in, from volcanoes to teak plantations, from not being able to make it up the road to making pit stops and grocery store stops in pretty much every town. It felt like it was quite the adventure, and I definitely hope that anyone in the future gets to experience it the same way. Up next, our first big stop was La Selva Biological Research Station. It was definitely my favorite place that we stayed during our trip there. It's the most amazing research place a scientist could ever hope to go to. It's just so inspirational and beautiful. There were rainforests all around, and one of the most amazing things was that this place, which was, I think, started over 50 years ago, was a coffee plantation when the founders first began La Selva. And now to see what it's become in such a short time frame, it's really makes you hopeful that maybe we're not too late in all the destruction that we've caused in Costa Rica and all around the world. There were treacherous bridges, as you can see, the drawbridge in the picture, that I had vertigo from, I think, until probably a few days after I returned back to the States. One of many drawbridges throughout Costa Rica. There were the river underneath. We saw crocodiles on the shore, or a crocodile, I should say, quite a large one. There were hikes that we had to go back to our room. I think it was probably about a 10-minute hike every day, which felt great. From walking trees that you can see over on the right-hand side. These trees that actually migrate over to where they can soak up more water. Just one of hundreds of different amazing species that are in Costa Rica. Up next, you can see from the pictures here, there were great meals to be had at La Selva. It was one of my favorite things. We really got to know each other and meet other people. There were many groups from all over the country and the world, for that matter, that were working on different research projects. Up there on the left is a picture of a poisonous frog, and that one actually was poisonous. One of many poisonous animals, from snakes and ants to the frogs. You had to watch your every step. And as you can see the picture on the right, we broke one of the cardinal rules, which was to never wear sandals. And it would have done as well that day, I think, given all the mud that we encountered. From the humidity and the bugs and the mud, it was quite the adventure, but I think we were all better for it in the end. Not too much wear and tear. Up next at La Selva, keep going with the same theme. As you can see, there's so many things there to see. There were wild pigs up there on the left. The picture over on the upper right-hand corner, there's actually a bat in there. These tiny little bats that were white and adorable, even considering how much I can't stand bats. From adventures on my own, exploring through all the miles and miles of trails, we took adventures with the group, as you can see in the middle, and received, I think, one of the most important and impactful, inspirational presentations I've ever received from the director of La Selva, Carlos, which I'll get to a little bit more in my other video. And just inspiration all around, like I mentioned, the scientists working on projects for 20, 30 years, and everyone just really excited and really grateful to be there. Some of the other highlights of La Selva were our numerous nature walks with our vastly knowledgeable nature guides that are trained in Costa Rica, that are locals. There's Albert down there on the right-hand side, quite the entrepreneur who owned also the company that we went rafting on, and I believe a couple of other things. We saw tons of different species of animals, ones that you usually only see in documentaries, from night walks in the rain to day hikes in the heat. It was definitely the way to experience and see as many different species and biodiversity as we could. I think the adventure highlight for La Selva was the rafting trips. We did both kind of a lazy river trip, and then we did a whitewater trip. It was beautiful scenery, amazing wildlife, tons of birds that we got to see, and got to jump off banks into the river and ride the rapids. I even fell in at one point with a couple of my other boatmates. There were tons of laughs, and it was really great to see everyone. You felt like a kid again. Our next stop on our tour of Costa Rica was Arenal, La Fortuna. It was a nice welcome. Our hotel there had a beautiful pool, which we greatly appreciated and definitely took advantage of. Those were the views from our hotel of the volcano, and beautiful scenery all around the area, from waterfalls to, again, the rich biodiversity. I think probably the highlight for me in Arenal was meeting Don Carlos, my favorite Costa Rican that I met. He's the owner of what they call in Costa Rica an organic farm, but he is just revolutionizing the way that people can actually farm in an environmentally friendly, animal friendly, and just kind of inspirational way. He's a dairy farmer that is not only treating his animals humanely and his land the way it should be treated, he's also converting methane gas into energy to use for his cheese processing plant. It was quite the story, and I think the time that I was most regretful for not understanding Spanish, because a lot can be lost in translation, but even what he did have to say through his translations, through his son and Dr. Moreno, he was quite a brilliant man and spoke profound words, and if only we could all be a little bit more like him and have the same passion and compassion that he has, the world would definitely be a better place. Some more fun things in La Fortuna. It was our educational fun, I guess you could call it, although it would have been fun on any count. We really bonded as a group. There is a picture of one of our many, many group dinners. They could be a little tedious at times, but definitely were full of laughs. And as you can see there on the bottom, it was our daily, numerous times a day ritual of spraying ourselves with DEET. None of us will probably be able to have children after this trip, and it didn't keep the bugs away, but it was quite funny. We called it our perfume every day. One of the other highlights for La Fortuna is we got to go zip lining, as you can see, and experience the world of the canopy ecosystem, something you never really give much thought to, or at least myself, until this trip, to think that there are dozens and dozens of species that never ever touch the ground, that are all living up there, and what the changes that are happening in the world, what is going to happen to these species, because it's such a sensitive area. But it was really nice to get up there and do I think it was the highest zip line in Costa Rica. Really got the adrenaline pumping, and it was great to see people really that were scared of heights just throw away their fears, and we did it as a group. Yet another bonding experience. Our next stop was at the beach. As you can see, these two pictures, when we first got to the beach, we assumed that the beach in front of our hotel looked like all the other beaches in the area, and couldn't for the life of us understand why the locals were yelling "wet dogs" when we ran onto the beach. But lo and behold, the next morning we realized that just around the corner there lay beautiful white sand beaches. So while we went swimming in the nasty brown beach where all the dogs swam, what we found around the corner was much better, and we spent the next day there, definitely all day, instead of going back. From walks along the beach to talks along the beach, runs, we did yoga, got massages. It was the relaxing part of our trip, and was greatly enjoyed. I also got to give my expert in the field talk here on mangroves and estuaries and coastal lagoons. I couldn't think of a better environment to do it in. And it really, I think, made everybody appreciate it just a little bit more. Some other highlights from the beach. Let's see, we got to go rafting and snorkeling. And by rafting, I mean getting pulled behind a boat at 40 or 50 miles per hour, but it was definitely a lot of fun. The local seafood, langosta, gracious host at the restaurant. It was all in all a really good time, and great to see a different ecosystem and different environment in Costa Rica. One of our last stops was Monte Alto. It was one of another research station that we got to stay at. I would say probably where we roughed it the most. We had mosquito nets on our beds, and cold water for showers, and bugs and scorpions and bats. Oh my! But it was fun all the same. Once again, I think we really bonded as a group and got to see another. I think lowland is what they call lowland rainforest, and it was beautiful all the same. We got to hike up 2 miles of quite a treacherous hike up to the bat caves, where, as you can see in the upper left corner, I am escaping while the whole group is going up. My fear of bats and the heat and the weight kind of overtook me, and I went back down early, which I'm sure I'll regret in a few weeks. It hasn't sunk in yet, though. So that's about it to sum up our trip. It was definitely a life-changing experience. We learned the true Costa Rican way of life, pura vida, from humorous sounds along the way, as you can see on the left, to the sounds of nature, of monkeys and bats and dogs and roosters. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. I grew as a person and got to meet an amazing, amazing group of individuals. So to all of you, I thank you. Goodbye.